Welcome to the introduction for the Concealed Information Test for Law Enforcement. The Concealed Information Test, or CIT, is a method for confirming a suspect's statements when denying involvement in a crime. The CIT is not a polygraph. It is simpler, but also can be very accurate when properly administered. It requires only a simple device for displaying and recording the galvanic skin response, or GSR, with sensors that are placed on the fingertips. The test procedure can be done in about 20 minutes. The CIT has scores of scientific published studies that demonstrate its validity. Before proceeding, here is a 5-item checklist to help you decide whether to use the CIT. The CIT is suitable if 1. You conduct investigations of criminal suspects. 2. Your investigation information is protected from public release. 3. You don't have access to polygraph services. 4. You have a suspect who claims not to know the details of a crime you're investigating. And 5. The suspect agrees to undergo a simple test. So what is the Concealed Information Test? The Concealed Information Test is a multiple choice test using electrodermal response, or GSR, to indicate whether an examinee recognizes information that only a guilty person would recognize. Suspects who do not know the crime details tend not to react to the crime details, whereas subjects who commit crimes recall and react to details of the crime. For purposes of illustration, let's watch the short video regarding the break-in of a home. The construction of the Concealed Information Test will require the selection of items. Those items must be memorable, unambiguous, and the information could not have been disclosed to the suspect by anyone, not investigators, news reports, or any other source. Item selection for the burglary video we watched earlier could include the point of entry, which was the back door, the means of entry, the key under the mat, the stolen item, the checkbook, another stolen item, the computer, and the item seen earlier in the scene and left behind, which was the screwdriver. Suspects do not remember everything about their crime, and there are some types of information that tends to be less memorable and therefore less useful in a concealed information test. Looking back at the previous video, some items that were present but not necessarily memorable were the color of the back door, the number of chairs at the table, the type of table covering, perhaps the property address or the owner's name, except under unusual circumstances. The construction of CITs is very simple. Each CIT will have one key or critical item per test. Each CIT will have at least 5 control items that are similar to the key but unrelated, and they also have to be plausible items. The sequence of the items will be at random with the key placed anywhere except the first position. You should have at least 3 keys, but more will provide a more valid test. Conducting the CIT is pretty straightforward. It begins by turning on your electrodermal recording device, or GSR, and saying something on the order of, if you're the person who stole those items from that house, you know which entrance was used to break in. Repeat after me each of these entrances. Then you would state the entrances at about 12 to 15 seconds apart, with the examinee repeating each one. The next 5 slides show how the burglary example would be tested. If you're the person that broke into that home, you know how the thief got in. Repeat after me each of these entryways. Basement door, garage door, bathroom window, kitchen window, back door, front door. Each of these items would be presented at about 15 seconds apart, and the critical item would be placed in any position except the first position. If you're the person who broke into that home, you did one of the following. Repeat after me. Broke a window, used a key, broke the hinges, pushed in a door, smashed the lock, cut through a wall. If you're the person who broke into that home, you know that something was left behind. Repeat each of these items after me. Gloves, bag, glasses, screwdriver, bolt cutter, shoe. Notice that the critical item has been moved to a new location within the CIT, as it is with every CIT. In the burglary example, there could have also been CITs constructed for the computer and the checkbook. Once all the individual CITs are collected, it's time to analyze them. The only thing of interest in the CIT are the sizes of the reactions that occur after the presentation of each of the items. Just as easy as conducting the CIT, scoring is also simple. It begins with ignoring the reaction to the very first item, which is usually caused by an orienting response. Then you score each CIT separately. When you look at the remaining items on each CIT ignoring the first, if the largest reaction is to the key, the score is 2. If the second largest reaction is to the key, the score would be 1. All others would be scored as a 0. Let's have a little scoring practice. Look at the graph in front of you. If you were to score this CIT, of course you would ignore the first item, which is at A. That reaction would be ignored. If your key had been item D, the largest reaction, that test would be scored a 2. If, on the other hand, the key had been item F, which is the second largest item, that test would have been scored a 1. Otherwise, the test would be scored as a 0. Once all the CITs have been conducted and scored, the scores are summed so you can get a result. If the total score is equal to or greater than the number of CITs, the results are labeled as recognition indicated. If the total scores are less than the number of CITs, it's considered no recognition indicated. In criminal investigative applications, the result of an RI, or recognition indicated, could be caused to interview the suspect to uncover the reason for the recognition of the keys. The accuracy of the CIT as a recognition test is comparable to the conventional polygraph in recognition testing. There are some caveats to keep in mind, however. It can only be used when suspects have not been exposed to the critical details of the crime by investigating officers or the news media or others. The accuracy can be affected by a number of critical items, so more is better. Also, it is not a deception test. It only indicates that someone has in his or her memory information about the crime which should be only known to guilty individuals. This completes the lesson on the concealed information test. If you'd like to know more, visit gsrsystems.com, which will explain in greater detail how to prepare, conduct, and analyze a concealed information test.